A jump scare is a film technique in which a loud sound or cinematic sting is used in a film to trigger the startle response in an audience. It should be used systematically to get a rise out of your spectators or to generate fear in droves. Markus Webber of Slate magazine cites a number of important films that use the jump scare to its advantage. The excerpt in Slate is lifted straight from one of his works, A Very Nervous Person's Guide to Horror Movies, in which he dissects the macabre and its gothic appeal to the audience. He is also the author of the exceptional Why Horror Seduces, a sprawling book about history's finest examples of horror and how they lure us with the appeal of a good story. It's all about a slow start, a dulling of the senses, and then, well, boo. There's some cool science behind this, though. As you know, the amygdala is the part of our brain responsible for creating the fear response. A 2023 neuroanatomy article on the little almond structure beneath our skulls reveals that the amygdala might be the culprit behind many ailments, including sleep debt, aggression, depression, and emotional memory. Fun fact, the Salk Institute of San Diego performed an experiment that tested the presence of fear in non-human entities. They used a common model, the Caenorhabditis elegans, basically this silly worm, to ethically measure the fear response of organisms. The worms were placed into groups of 2. When one group was soaked in a solution containing Zoloft, they displayed significantly weaker fear responses to a predator. But back to that thing there, the fear response. The most common reactions fall into a category of fight or flight, but you might also be familiar with freeze, which produces a reaction that is equal to its name, and fawn, when one might fall back into people-pleasing and use complacency as a defense mechanism. When a jump scare is used properly, it's meant to hijack the brain for a brief second. Triggering the fear response can have several benefits for a film, the main one being that it is easy and exploitative. The more short-form adrenaline you can produce, the more dopamine your audience will get. It's a fast track to success for a film. You can, more or less, produce the same scares back to back, and many people will enjoy the film just because of the chemicals your work pulled from them. Think back to that one scene in SpongeBob where Mr. Krabs pulled the image sequences just right out of that man. Pulling an artificial response from the audience causes a spike in cortisol, the same chemicals that spike when we ride a roller coaster or play that one knife game that you thought you were good at until you used hand sanitizer later. A good director will use the jump scare to shape its audience's expectations for a film. Like it or not, sound is an integral part of generating fear. It's not meant to be overused, and in the best scenarios, it need not be used at all. Over time, the jump scare has evolved to become a staple of video games. Newer games have a much harder time being scary. It's becoming increasingly difficult to scare a generation who is used to the fast food restaurant monopolies of video games today, Steam and itch.io. Much of the anticipation between larger titles has faded significantly compared to that of bygone eras, unless, of course, you're a fan of Silksong. My point is, the modern generation need not worry about surprises. There's nothing new under the sun. With thousands of available games on Steam, you might be able to play 5, maybe even 6 of those. The possibilities are endless, and every developer is jumping to reach for the greatest method of scaring their audience. Anything that's done once can be done 1,000 times over, only newer and better than the last. Although a bad practice for development, every new game is an attempt to build upon the one before it, or at least it feels that way. A good example would be PT clones, which cropped up in the early 2000s after the ubiquitous influence of the playable teaser, a Silent Hill teaser released on PlayStation 4 by Hideo Kojima. As mentioned by this wonderful artist, style is now substance, and it seeps into every last corner of the video game world. Neither scientists nor their experiments can help us figure out the answers, but horror drives the game economy forward like a wheel that runs only on blood. As always, here are some pointers for you to follow during your time here. Yes, I have watched some of the more popular videos covering this wonderful game. They are very good. No, I am not going to do any of what those videos do. Instead of ranking characters or talking in depth about the story, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to explain why you like this game and what it's done to attract its audience in such a massive way. I'm going to discuss the unintended genius of Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion. I'm going to explain how this game makes you tick and what makes its villains so poignant. I'm going to gush over the art, the animation, and the playstyle. And lastly, I'm going to discuss Spookies as a concept rather than a piece of media. This game has had undeniable reach, and I've seen little exactly like it. I think it's got something that makes it a really special horror game. Something I know, and you don't. The rain drones on overhead. It's humid in the mansion's foyer. 2 spiral staircases extend on either side, beckoning you to move forth. The furniture is glossy, perfect, and the lighting is warm and inviting. Sconces hold a candle to the green and gray bricks. Your wet shoes squeak on the tile floor. This is the only time you will feel safe.
Hello, I am Spooky. And this is my home. Can you, humble player, make it through 1,000 rooms? Can you find what lies at the end? Or is there even an end? Because I don't really know. Anyway, just go.
This is the only goal of the game. You need to make it through 1,000 rooms. The rooms are as basic as you can possibly get. A chair here, an end table there, maybe a dresser or 2. At first, you'll scour these objects with intent, certain that something lurks beneath them. You probably shouldn't stand still for too long, though. I'll explain that later. The ceilings are high and the rain continues its tantrum beyond the dull walls of the mansion. It's terribly quiet. At first, this place just seemed cute, but I've been here for days now. I'm feeling quite parched now, and I keep getting this feeling like I am being watched by something. This is not romantic at all. As the rooms begin to pick up their pace, you'll begin to move fluidly through the halls, stopped slightly each time by these little cardboard pictures of pumpkins, cute cats, mummies. What the hell is going on? Sometimes there's a filing cabinet on the floor. You don't know why it's there. Rugs are placed at odd angles throughout each room. The halls are sickeningly narrow, and some of them go on for far too long. A bed in one room, a window in another. Each door opens to yet another equally empty room. Sometimes they might contain a painting, sometimes a torn canvas. Room 35. Are the rooms circling back on themselves? Surely not, because you're making progress, right? A room full of bay windows that don't open, random rugs on the floor, pictures of faceless entities with a vaguely threatening aura. Room 43. I know something is following me, but I feel like I'm prancing through the same rooms over and over. Hopefully leaving notes as breadcrumbs will prove I am making progress and reaching some destination. I just hope I don't run out of ink. I am dreadfully thirsty. Room 48, there's a pile of bones on the floor. Room 50, a small, dull, unfinished basement. Surrounding you, a naked lattice of metal reveals layers of packed soil. It is here you will realize that the mansion is oddly underground. You are drawn to the cross somehow. So far, so good. You feel slightly more at ease here. The droning, slightly sharp keys of the hallway theme are no longer present, only silence. Keep a little pep in your step, says the smiling cup of coffee on the wall behind you. You just might. You jam your thumb into the button marked down. The room begins to tremble and then it shudders to the next floor. Away you go through dozens more nondescript rooms, a cage with a human skull in it, nestled quietly in the brick walls. It seems to be much darker here. This was such a surprise that there would be another entry, another actual entry, one I could admire. But then as suddenly as it came, it left. And now you disband. Your influence and inspiration will never leave me. This won't make any sense until you reach the right room, room 58. Ink, not quite quenching my thirst. Taste is terrible, stains are terrible. I don't think drinking it was a very romantic idea. You press on to room 59 and then to room 60. Alright, so let's stop here. Hopefully now you understand what's happening. As you've probably expected, unless you have somehow managed to escape the influence of this game, Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, formerly Spooky's House of Jump Scares, is infamous for its subversion of expectations. The initial reaction to each jump scare was quite literally monumental upon the game's release. Not only were some people afraid of the cardboard cutouts themselves, but people were genuinely freaking out at the monsters. All of that said, I won't be wasting any more time discussing how this game works. You already know that part. You go down some halls, you read some notes, a guy comes out of the ceiling, you scream, you run, you find the elevator, you save. You do that now for 1,000 rooms, except for when Spooky, the main antagonist of the game, gives you a detour. But it's not really a detour because she hates you.
Well, here you are, alive and still here. You just keep on going, don't you? Well, the next door has been fixed up for you, so enjoy and keep moving on, you little fleshy live one.
Day 7. I can't tell the real from unreal anymore. My limbs refuse to move the way I want them to. I feel like I'm wading in a deep river that is always flowing against my direction. Now I will lay down and let the river flow over me. I will let it guide me to its end. I know where I'm going anyway. This place, this entire place, is just a gyrating, screaming rock in the vastness of an infinite kingdom. I'm going to rest now. I'll be watching over you. Okay, so it's the night of the 4th of July, and my neighbors are still doing fireworks at 11 p.m., and it's scaring my cat a lot. So while I'm sitting in here with him, I thought to go ahead and add this extra piece in. This note and some of the others come from different victims of the mansion, all whom have met their fate and documented it along the way. This note in particular is from a character only known as the Survivalist in the game's wiki, along with the romantic victim, the one we were following before, and the tropes victim. You can see how sarcastic the game's sense of humor is. Notes might seem out of order because they are. The game's levels are all procedurally generated. To put that in very simple terms, the game has a special code which tells it to generate random map layouts each time you enter a door without the developer having to go in and make the levels by hand, which would not only take forever, but it would also make everybody's game experience really boring. Games that you love that use procedural generation include Don't Starve, The Binding of Isaac, and Enter the Gungeon. Okay, back to the video. Other than that, it's really and truly 1,000 rooms. Sort of. If for whatever reason you are drawn from accounting and you have found this video in a strange roundabout way because you love Pink Floyd but hate video games for some reason, then all of this is new to you, and I recommend you take a day off from loathing in modern day capitalism to play this game. Since its Steam release date of March 1st of 2017, Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion sits at 3,000 reviews, a majority of them overwhelmingly positive, and some of them from people who might not be getting the point. So, if that's the game's gimmick, then what's the point? Well, the whole point of Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion is that it's a tired parody of horror protagonists and their downfalls in the many horror tropes that have become popular and are still harped upon to this day. It's a charming blend of comedy and horror as you follow behind a series of notes that reflect the outcome of those before you. Regrettably, you are the only surviving protagonist, as Spooky intends for every human to eventually die and become a member of her ghost army. Yes, really. The mansion is constantly changing, which explains the ever-shifting halls, of course. And the maze-like nature of the mansion means that if you don't die of a heart attack or a parasite or a giant floating head running towards you at 98 miles per hour, you'll probably die of thirst. The gameplay loop is addictive and fun. Peeling back the layers of the mansion reveals numerous references to real-world popular horror.
Yes, hello.
Perhaps my favorite detail is the arcade game, which features these little ghosts named after Bram Stoker and Edgar Allan Poe. I suppose, though, that we should get into the meat of things. The enemies that come after you are called specimens, and each one is vaguely inspired by a subject of horror from our universe, the one we live in. The boring one. There isn't really any story or anything between specimens either. It's just a handful of notes from either one of the victims of the mansion, spooky little cardboard cutouts, and endless hallways. So I'm not jumping around here. One of the most important parts of this game is a little computer that spawns every 50 to 100 rooms or so. More specifically, it's a terminal that tells you how each specimen works. Cat DOS will tell you how the creature kills, its number of victims, and gives a brief description of its classification. This one kills by a method of tearing, as indicated by its outstretched claws and gaping mouth filled with teeth. Specimen 1 is not very scary. I mean, sure, it's definitely scary upon first meeting because you're surprised, but all we've seen so far is cute toast and adorable pumpkin and whatever the fuck this is right here, so of course you might be scared. I really like the noise it makes. The sort of reverse throat-closed suffocating scream it does is quite an alarming introduction. The music for Specimen 1 is definitely one of the more unusual themes. It's stilted in a way the other songs are not. It kind of just plods forward with no ending and no beginning and doesn't really have any build-up or solid footing as a song. It's just a theme that sort of starts, and then as quickly as it arrives, the music fades into nothingness. This pattern will become easier to spot as you play the game. Ambitious players will become impatient with the tedious task of blazing through 1,000 very boring rooms, but the game has lots more to show you along the way. Specimens do become more frightening as time progresses. Notable characters include the Masked Man, the spirit of a doll salesman trapped in the body of a puppet. Like many of the other specimens, his gameplay is very Weeping Angel-ish. In order to beat the Masked Man, you'll need to constantly be facing him, and this definitely means whipping around as soon as you enter a room. For as long as the encounter lasts, you will have to run backwards. He emerges from the ceiling with a gentle but indistinguishable wooden clatter, and will slash a good deal of your health if he catches you ignoring him. This is the first and most obvious reference in the game. The Majora's Mask entry in Legend of Zelda was undeniably the creepiest of its predecessors. Zelda has always straddled the line between creepy and heartwarming, and Majora's Mask made a startling addition that corrected an otherwise unclear tone between games. Players were used to unfriendly characters and dark areas in Ocarina of Time already. The screeching voices of Redeads and wolves were enough to spook young audiences, but there was always something much more disturbing in Ocarina of Time that I might potentially address in a future video. Majora's Mask capitalizes on this darkness, this sense of impending doom. Faces are drawn back into unpleasant smiles, and players are forced to reckon with the pressure of potentially being responsible for the fate of the characters that they have gotten to know and love throughout the game. As to be expected, the characters are constantly stressed at the cosmic event that plates the town. They are afraid of death, and you are expected to prevent it. Combine that with a time limit, and boom, you've got horror. Anyway, the Masked Man is an undeniable reflection of these faces, his smile pulled taut into an angry scowl, his hand clutching a pin-sharp needle, and his stance not unlike that of a Redead. Insightful players will recall the typical urban legend villain from this series is actually Link himself, in the old tale of Ben Drowned. The puppeteer's gameplay does become tedious after a while, though, and I found myself wondering when this old man would leave me alone. Let's jump ahead a bit. Another of my favorite specimens in the game is Specimen 4. With Japanese horror as its primary influence, it is worth noting that 4 is typically a number considered to be cursed in Japanese culture. Around room 165 to 170, you'll be plunged into complete darkness and given a tiny beam of a flashlight which barely cuts through the blackness. A quick review of your surroundings will reveal a typical high school with lockers on either side of the corridor. Moving further down the halls, you'll duck into classrooms that are equally as dark, and you can pick up the notes you find on the desks. Matsuri never came to class today. I hope she made it home okay. Could it really be true? I thought the fairy tales about the ghosts that eat children who sneak in after class was just to keep us from disobeying, but Matsuri is still missing. The best part about this section of the game is that it gives very little context for what's happened here, even less than the other specimens. The surroundings are more than enough to speak for what's happened. In all her glory, 𝚘𝚘𝚘𝚘 emerges from the walls, and her theme plays loudly behind her. With a sort of creaking noise caught in her throat, she floats behind the player without stopping. Specimen 4 crosses over gaps without a hitch, floating across levels and through walls. And this makes levels like the one with the fucking chair at the end very frustrating, as you'll have to avoid running into her. Her song, Breakfast Was Late, is a sickeningly sweet tune with harshly bit-crushed synths, a tribute to 𝚘𝚘𝚘's distorted image flickering on the screen in the darkness in her torn gown, her eyes swollen with blood. 𝚘𝚘𝚘's presentation and level design is by far one of my favorites in the game. It clearly displays how 𝚂𝚘𝚘𝚘𝚗 excels at the transformative nature of video games. Speaking of transformation, Specimen 5. This creature is a hostile female mannequin with crepey skin. She wields a large blade, not unlike the cumbersome steel that Pyramid Head tries to kill the player with in Silent Hill. The reference will not be lost on players in this area of the game. Specimen 5's encounter starts in this dilapidated hall with multiple large steel doors. The floor is a grate through which there is only blackness. Fog encircles you, limiting your field of view. A thin veil of static furthers your discomfort, bleeding onto the edges of the screen more as you progress. Your shoes are uncomfortably loud within the silence of the level. A halo of darkness follows you as you move from room to room. In one room, what appears to be a pallet of stretched human skin is pulled over stiff wooden poles. The room is dark, humid, and infected with red rust. At least, that's what it appears to be. Accompanied by the gentle hum of synths, you pick up a note on the table. The darkness is slowly consuming us now. I don't think our rituals will appease it much longer. How were we supposed to know this would happen? A future note in a room down the hall reads, "It's not really our fault. We just did what mothers told us to do in this sort of situation." And yet another. "Mother is not pleased with us. How are we supposed to know that the girl wasn't pure?" And as you've probably guessed, Specimen 6 barrels down the hallway, parading her bloody blade by letting it drag alongside her. The Spooky's HD renovation of this game changed a lot of things, namely the specimen interactions. Specimens no longer just chase after the player, they walk or stagger or float towards you with a pace that initially feels slow but can quickly catch up with you. Specimens are not to be underestimated, unless of course they're literally any of these ones. As with all of the enemies, 5 has several methods to hinder your escape. She can change the textures of the walls and floor as soon as you are within her sight. This makes it extremely difficult to see where the door ends and the wall begins, and if you're sensitive to stimuli or get easily stressed, you might accidentally find yourself in the direct path of Bab, as she's known from the Spooky's House of Jumpscares Mansion wiki. My very favorite specimen is actually not in this section of the game, it's in the DLC. I suppose that when I said I wasn't going to rank the specimens, that wasn't entirely true. As for the scariest specimen in the entirety of this game, the competition lies between 9 and 10. These might actually seem like odd choices, but I will explain my reasoning. Let me set the scene. Specimen 9's encounter starts in room 610 in a cold, dark laboratory setting akin to that of a Dead Half-Life mod. White fluorescent lights fill the area, and doors are electronically sealed shut with these floating buttons. Shortly after you read your first note, the power will go out. The notes for this area are as follows. This old place is somehow even worse than the new GL labs. Although it seems to have been constructed with a much larger budget than the new lab, nothing works quite right. I can see why it was abandoned so quickly. I wonder if there really is anything here worth salvaging. The facility is quite odd. Some of the equipment doesn't seem quite right, almost as if it were designed for people without hands. Spooky just said that there were things we needed to salvage from this place. I'm starting to worry that a loose specimen may be included in the list of things for us to retrieve. The power just shut off again. Is everything broken in here? I don't know what to do. I can't think well. I feel strange. I'm hiding from that thing. I feel like something is growing on my skin. I can't seem to tear it off fast enough, and I'm losing a lot of blood. You have to keep it close. It becomes something else when it gets too far away. Something you can't outrun. You turn on the generator, and as it stutters to life, Specimen 10 will emerge from the vents of the abandoned GL labs. The pale, segmented worm with rows of misshapen teeth crawls at a stunningly fast rate at the player, and then emerges as what appears to be a human being cocooned in flesh. It walks with no autonomy, all human features buried under mounds of pink and white skin. The legs are striped with blood, and what I believe is one of the eyes of the victim flails wildly out of place above its head. It could be a piece of the lower intestine, or something much worse, but you are unable to study this detail much further as Specimen 10 continues its slow, unforgiving walk towards you. Those new to Spooky's House of Jump Scares will attempt to run away, but that is, unfortunately, a mistake. Players will find that when in close proximity to this creature, 2 flaps of skin will open on either side of the body, revealing several rows of sharp teeth connected by ruched skin and encasing a smaller mouth with several more rows of teeth inside it. If you don't stay within close range of 10, it will transform into a much smaller parasitic life form that looks similar to the one that emerged from the vents. This tiny parasite will attempt to burrow into you, producing a layer of skin or mucus or something on the screen and further obscure your view. Because of this mechanic, you are forced to stare at 10 for an extended period of time, listening to its music and walking slowly, but not too slowly, backwards. All the while it plods forth on those unfeeling legs, the corpse of a human with his mouth sewn shut, made only to serve the parasite. The main reason I like this specimen so much is actually because of what it implies. As with all specimens, it is inferred that the individual writing the notes unfortunately fell victim to the creature, and is now the unfortunate host walking towards you. Specimen 10 has the most uncomfortable and surprising tactics of any of the others. As with any of them, it can definitely get annoying at times, but if you're able to get a short chase sequence, I think it works. 10 is an obvious play on several horror tropes. The Thing and Alien are 2 very obvious influences that come to mind, as any good experiment gone wrong story begins with a sterile laboratory with broken glass, leaky vials, and abandoned experiments. Everything seems to have stopped in place, and there's a distinct feeling of having interrupted something. Some of the best horror, in my opinion, is making loud noises in a quiet space. It feels like you're going to awaken something, like it's going to hear you. But after escaping 10, you can continue to spam shift.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
It's not a good idea to stand still for very long in Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion. The pause screen with its relaxing music encourages players to pause the game for as long as they like, but surely there's nothing wrong with a few moments of in-game activity while you check your texts, right? I mean, who wouldn't want a break after traversing through hundreds of rooms? I'll just be a moment. I just need to get up and get a drink, maybe stretch. Yes, really, if your controls are idle for more than 2 minutes, the game does this to you. I think that's quite possibly one of my favorite mechanics in any game. It actually punishes you for doing something in the real world. 9 can approach you from any place in the mansion, and upon contact you will die if you have less than 45 health points. Aside from the fact that 9 takes a great deal of damage, there's also the psychological effect that it has on the player's style of play. Because of this specimen, you're encouraged to continue moving constantly. You are forced to adjust your playstyle in multiple ways to avoid this encounter. Regrettably, reading a note also counts as being idle, so you'll have to move the arrow keys or Ys to avoid an encounter. 9 can also kill you in safe rooms, the only spaces where you're trained to let your guard down. Specimen 9 is a Keter class Apollyon. Oh, wait. Sorry, that's... I had the wrong notes. Let me just... Specimen 9 is a floating human head with gnashing teeth, gouged eyes, and withered clay-like skin. Its neck is long and the holes in its face are deep. If you had plans to play this game at all, there are some serious spoilers ahead, as with any game I cover, so just be warned. Okay, here we go. At the very end of the game, Spooky is of course very unhappy to see you, as she has been at every other point in your path. A majority of players will get the generic ending for this game, one in which Spooky will recruit you into her ghost army. In one of the endings, you'll be expected to fight Specimen 9, the creature that's been stalking you from the beginning of the game. Spooky's House of Jump Scares is a large experimentation center set in the infinite third dimension, wherein a ghost girl who died due to unnatural causes creates specimens that are systematically trained to kill human beings, all in the interest of creating ghosts that she claims she wishes people would stop calling cute. This becomes more clear in the DLC, but Spooky was actually murdered. What conclusions can we draw from this? How does any of this make Spooky's a scary game? I'm getting to that now, so don't worry. Spooky's has a lot of issues with its structure. By this I mean to say that it's one of those games by which an individual may have access to the story if only they might dig for it. That in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is that this video is not really about the story, it's about the gameplay and the atmosphere. But this game is very surface level at first glance, and its style is silly and cartoonish, and that's really off-putting to certain audiences. Spooky's House of Jump Scares was a direct affront to other popular games at the time, namely Alien Isolation, Five Nights at Freddy's, and Fatal Frame, all of which have a heavy influence on Kira's work. It's understood that this sort of game would not impress people who were raised on Xbox games, the kinds of people who want games to look as real as possible. The same kinds of people that showed you gore of your comfort character in middle school. Yes, Zachary, I'm talking about you. With the addition of the dollhouse and Karimari Hospital, Akuma Kira improved upon the scare factors. Now listen, I would love to spend some extra time in the game's DLC because that is my favorite part of this game, but I just honestly do not have the resources for that at this moment. As far as Karimari Hospital and the dollhouse go, they are, in my opinion, their own experiences that serve to improve upon what the base game already does best: subvert expectations. There are plenty more monsters to be scared by, lots of wonderful music, and a haunting atmosphere in both games with eerie, memorable art. But I wanted to focus on the base game in this video because I think a lot of people overlook its genius. See, Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion makes fun of something we've all seen before while serving up its own brand of horror. That is extremely hard to do in the same game. The same tactic can be seen in Duck Season, a game I really loved for its bizarre and on-the-nose approach to nostalgia and mascot horror. In the summer of 1988, a little boy is gifted a video game from his mother. From morning until night, he sits on the living room floor surrounded by cartridges, toys, and slices of pizza. The antagonist is this dog mascot who is more than what he appears. The game also has motion controls, which forces the player to use all of their senses. I love it. I think it's genius. Spooky's does something quite similar to Duck Season. It forces the player to move constantly and to always expect the unexpected while surrounding the player with new and interesting threats. Spooky's managed to gain notoriety without its DLCs, and I honestly think that it's well deserved. There's a struggle between gameplay, storytelling, and art. A majority of games focus on 2 out of those 3 elements. For instance, Disillusion is more story-based with the option of combat. It relies on art and animation to carry the story, and that is wonderful. Hylics 2 is based much less upon story than art or animation. Combat and appearance are both the primary focus of this strange top-down game. Hell, in Hylics 1, you genuinely don't know what anybody is talking about. Something about Gibby, and there's a yellow guy with horns there, and this lady's not wearing any pants, just kind of a cape thing happening, I don't know. Take a game like Rusty Lake, which is another of my favorites. The Rusty Lake series consists of multiple point-and-click adventures with puzzle elements. Rusty Lake has always managed to balance the video game triad, gameplay, art, and story, but it lacks any serious action, and the story can often be cryptic and disguised with layers of symbolism. Although Spooky's can be criticized for its tedious gameplay and tendency to become a walking simulator, I think this is objectively a good horror game. There's all kinds of weird little jokes in the game, like this poster in the save room that I stole and put in my own comic as a reference because I thought it would be funny and that people would get it. Of course, you won't find me talking about a game I hate because I like to give video games the benefit of the doubt. Even now, the things I speak can be considered subjective despite how staunch of an opinion I have. But maybe I can try and convince you otherwise. This game has a couple of things going for it that make it so neat. It utilizes a very limited style of play, for one. Running through the halls and trying to get to the end is the goal, and that has inspired a number of interested players who want to see the number in the corner of the screen go up. That in and of itself creates a special kind of serotonin. This goal disappears entirely in the DLC. Instead, your tasks revolve around finding keys and notes, uncovering lore, and either escaping the area or pleasing the spirit of a young girl who was trapped inside of a doll. Yep. That's what you're supposed to do. The entire idea of make it through 1,000 rooms is an idea that capitalizes on repetition and enhances it with sudden scares, making it ideal streamer bait, if unintentional. It's fun to play with friends because you can both put on a pair of headphones and endure the scares, solve a few puzzles, and uncover the lore together. It's also something that's fun to speedrun, as the monsters act independently and some are easy to cheese. Another point goes to this game for writing. Although the story is absolutely absurd, you start to feel really bad for the protagonist whose notes you stumble upon, and especially for yourself. Despite the fact that Spooky has managed to trap these characters and force them to cooperate, they each leave their own mark, reminding you that the chances of your own escape are slim. Leaving notes in video games is a practice as old as Resident Evil 1, in which you are to collect files, tools, healing items, photographs, and anything else that you could pick up after stumbling around and dying in the same place over and over again. By the time Amnesia got big, notes were all the rage in video games, as they were the easiest way to connect with the player via another perspective. They also uniquely circumvented the issue of creating more dialogue between character models, and reduced the game's size as well. These notes were often warnings about the path ahead, often dropping significant portions of lore and explaining key environment details, such as in Layers of Fear, for instance. This game pays homage to those works, but doesn't bog the player down with long stretches of text, something that Amnesia: The Bunker is quite guilty of despite it being a wonderful game. The notes act as they should, a storytelling medium, but the environments, characters, and other subtle details really make up most of the story. I really like the unpolished style of Spooky sprites. The skins themselves are rough around the edges and painted using a digital blender or gouache brush of sorts, after which they are laid over a 3D model. At least, that's what I think they look like. The HD renovation improved upon the designs, but didn't take away that charm we've come to love in the game, and I think it works great for an indie project like this one. In the DLC, though, the difference between the old and new sprites are quite staggering, and where some of the specimens failed to invoke terror in the base game, the dollhouse more than makes up for that. Here's a little tidbit for you. The dollhouse is about a few things, but mostly it's about experiments performed on dead or dying children in which the human souls are placed inside of a husk, usually a doll that resembles the human that has passed away. These experiments are shown to have at one point been a part of an adoption program to train human beings to care for the living spirits. Think like Build-A-Bears, but there's a dead Victorian child inside, and it occasionally gets real sad. The problem is, if the spirit inside does not like their new mortal shell, they will undergo husk rejection, wherein their body begins to try and stretch to a new form. My favorite specimen, who I also hate and is terrible, goes by the name Wormy Charles. Wormy Charles is what happens when a human spirit undergoes husk rejection. His legs are stretchy, his arms are stretchy, he's stretchy. And when you hit him with the axe, he doesn't really die, he just sinks into a pile of flesh. You bother me, Wormy Charles. Last but not least, Spooky's House of Jumpscares has a wonderful soundtrack that fits its aggressive, unpredictable patrons. 𝚂𝚘𝚘𝚔𝚢 is the musician behind this project, of course. Each song's title is a combination of a disturbing word and a cute object, fitting snugly into the theme behind Spooky and her endless mansion. These stilted, uncomfortable themes signal the arrival of their counterpart, so you are sort of trained to run as soon as you hear the beginning of a song. Rom M is an artist on YouTube responsible for the very groovy remixes in this video, by the way. You should go check out his music. The best songs across the entirety of the game are the ones that do not belong to any particular specimen, though. Despite my hesitance to dissect the complicated lore and atmosphere of Katamari, I could not neglect the music. Just Another Room, like many other songs in the game, is a simple piece with only a fluttering piano melody over the rhythmic crash of cymbals and a kick drum. It's deceitfully innocent. This Is Dan has a similar approach without any kind of beat. It's a hollowed out refrain of wind and distant howling with a couple of gentle notes dancing over the top. As you've probably guessed, these songs are closest in reference to Akira Yamaoka's work, and the effect it has on the game makes it suddenly much darker in tone than any part of the DLC. Similar to the Barophobia theme, Warm Hands and a Gentle Stab is an honorable mention of a song for me. It's actually been my third or fourth alarm for a long time. Getting up at 6 a.m. is hard, okay? This song is a whisper of ambient noise, smoothed over with humming and the gentle strike of something metal from time to time in the background, and encapsulates the whole idea of Spooky's house of jump scares, the infinite nature of the maze and its tragic victims, the paranormal activity at the hospital, and especially how deceitful the antagonist is. Although I will not go over it in detail, you'll find that every single character in the game is, to some extent, a victim, with Spooky being the worst of them all. Her death, which is detailed in the dollhouse, was an accident, and as she loved to do in life, she spends the afterlife trying to scare people. Chocolate Plushie is similar to Breakfast Was Late in its ironic approach to the horror of everything happening at this abandoned hospital. Fans of Awful draw immediate parallels to A Stab of Happiness, with some instruments sounding as though they share the same VST. Akira excels at irony in this game, frequently juxtaposing adorable pieces of toast with the horrors of dying in fast food service. It is because of this irony that the game remains popular with its audience. It never takes itself too seriously. The game understands its players and its fan base, and never attempts to capitalize on the formula that has been so painstakingly crafted here. There is a reason why I skipped over quite a few enemies, and that's because one of them is a floating cow, and another is literally the devil. Hell, one of the specimens is just a narrative about dying at a 9-to-5 job without ever having accomplished anything. I don't want to talk about that, man. That hits too hard.
Stop saying all this crazy nonsense. It's making me messed up. I'm 13. You're messing me up.
There's not really much more I can say about this game without robbing you of the experience that it has to offer. I think it blends horror and humor perfectly while still keeping clever gameplay tactics at its forefront. While I am normally keen on dissecting every aspect of my favorite media, I think this one is something you should take a look into yourself. Go play the game. I always tell you guys to go do this. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you are not too upset that this wasn't a lore video, but maybe that's something I can focus on in a future project. Who knows? It is a sunny Sunday afternoon. Go spend some time relaxing, maybe take advantage of that groovy Steam sale. Drink plenty of water, it's hot as hell out there. I will see you another time, stranger. Until then, goodbye.